Skipping stones, calling a critter. Do you hear me when I speak? I felt so alone, dancing like a chicken. Pray my ancestors guide me. Didn't believe in revolution. I thought love had bypassed me. Now in the light of the moment, you set my spirit free. It's just right. I see the look that's in your eyes. It says, come hold me tight. I wanna feel you deep inside. And when the moon starts to hide, the sun embraces the night. I feel you by my side. I can't wait for the morning light with you. Mado, 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 hey. Mado, 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 hey. Mado, 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 hey. Mado, the morning light. And even in my darkest hour, you make the blackest sky blue. You are my shooting star. I am so in love with you, and even in my depths of sorrow, you always come through. You are my everything. I wanna spend my life with you. Mado, 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 hey. Mado, 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 hey. Mado, 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 hey. Mado, the morning light. When the light is just right, I see the look that's in your eyes. It says, come hold me tight. I wanna feel it deep inside. When the moon starts to hide, the sun embraces the night. I feel you by my side. I can't wait for the morning light with you. Mado, 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 hey. Mado, 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 hey. Mado, 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 hey. Mado, the morning light. I want to thank you for loving me, and I want to thank you for loving me. Oh, I want to thank you for loving me. I want to thank you for loving me. I want to thank you for setting me free. Skipping.
Eskongi Hesje, greetings and welcome to the 11th annual Bay Area American Indian Two-Spirit Powwow. My name is Roger Kuhn. I am a member of the Border Creek Nation, and it is a true honor to be with you all this evening for the Two-Spirit Indigiqueer Emergence panel. This panel follows a panel that I did earlier in the week that some of you may have seen called When the Elders Speak. And I wanted to get this panel together to really talk about the perspectives and opinions that are from the emerging generation of Two-Spirit leaders. And we'll be talking about different topics, including social media and activism, all in the ways in which it's impacting Two-Spirit and Native communities, as well as our larger LGBTQI+ ally community as well. So for those of you that may not know, the Bay Area American Indian Two-Spirits exist to restore and recover the role of Two-Spirit people within the American Indian First Nations community by creating a forum for the spiritual, cultural, and artistic expression of Two-Spirit people. Joining me tonight are a group of panelists that are here to share their perspective on a number of topics we will be covering. If you have questions for our panelists, please be sure to drop them into the comment section on the YouTube stream, and I will incorporate as many of them as I can into our conversation tonight. And to start things off, I am going to turn toward our panelists and ask them to introduce themselves, including their tribal affiliation, and if they are part of any Two-Spirit community, what that might be and any role they may play in that. And to start us off, I'm going to say, hello, Sam. Welcome.
Hello, thank you. My name is Sam. I am Dene and I am Inde. On my dad's side, on my mom's side, we are Yaqui. Yome. I am actually the drum keeper for the Bay Area American Indian Two Spirits drum. We have been blessed to be able to do virtual drum circles, and I'm just excited to be here. This is the third powwow that I'm involved in some capacity, and so yeah, thank you, and thank you to these other panelists. That's yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Sam. I'm going to bring you back in just a moment and ask you a few more questions about the role of the Two-Spirit drum in community, etc. So I'm going to turn this over to Charlie. Hey, Charlie, welcome. Please introduce yourself. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you so much, Roger. As everyone may already know, my name is Charlie Amaya Scott. My English pronouns are they, them, and she, hers. I am also Dene and was born and raised within the central part of the Navajo Nation, within a small, lovely community near Canche National Park. And I'm also a third year PhD student. I basically study colleges and universities, how they function, how they operate, how they organize. And I am very honored to be known on social media as the Net Aesthetics, in which I sort of question, critique, reflect on what it means to be queer and trans and Dene in the 21st century.
Well, thank you so much. And I look forward to saying, what up, Dr. Charlie? As from one doctor to the other, soon to be. I'm very, very excited for you. And we just support you in all your efforts. And it's really, really just a joy to have you here tonight. And I'm going to bring my friend Boyd into the conversation. Hey there. How are you, Boyd?
Hey, I'm good.
Good.
Thanks for asking me to be here. Dante kakiao nawagumaganak, units kiskwapun utsenia, egwamaga ameskuti waskaigan. My name is Boyd Whiskey Jack. I'm here today representing the Edmonton Two-Spirit Society in Alberta, Canada. I'm originally from Satellite Cree Nation and super excited to be here.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Now, Boyd, are you going to be part of the event later on this evening?
Yeah.
Maybe. So, folks, stay tuned. There is going to be a show that's part of the powwow tonight that starts at, I believe, 7 o'clock Pacific time. So just change that over to whatever time zone you may be in, and you may see someone that looks very familiar if you participate in that viewing as well. So thank you so much. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yue, hi there. Good to see you. Thanks so much for being here. Love for you to take a moment and introduce yourself to everyone.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you. Ayat eshik estoshik edoshne you begin ishe nakhaiden enshle ki ani bashchin the betlejen dashte do kabahan dashnale agot egot aden enshle agot egot anat landishna so Auto Cal State University deniniltka Auto Indigenous Parale be co-chair enshle at Vanguard de Geheshten de coordination Nasha. So hello everyone, my name is Yue. I am of the Nomadic People clan born for the Towering House clan. My maternal grandfather's clan is of the Black Sheep clan and my paternal grandfather's clan is of the Water's Edge clan. So in this way, I identify as a Navajo transgender woman. I am an alumna from Cal State Pavugna, which is Cal State Long Beach. I currently live in Los Angeles on Tongva people lands, but I'm originally from the Navajo Nation from a small town called Cayenta, Arizona. So pleasure to be here.
Great, thank you. Thank you all so much. And now to bring into the conversation my dear friend Vic. What a joy to be with you tonight. Hey.
Good evening, y'all. Thank you for inviting me, Roger. I'm super excited to be here with such amazing panelists. So yes, my name's Victoria. I go by Vic, sometimes Victor. I'm Yoeme Machika, first generation here. Born and raised in the village of Huchun, and present day known the East Bay, Oakland, California, and the traditional territory of the Leshana. And I met Roger through BAAITS, through social media and just kind of following BAAITS and then volunteering with the Powwow for the last 3 years, I believe.
That's right. Yeah, we've sewed tobacco bags together. I think that you actually may have helped me a lot because I'm a little quick on the pedal, if you will, for sewing. So I want tonight to really feel like just a dialogue between us. So if you all have questions, curiosities, please chime in. And to get things started, I know we all have different backgrounds that we may come from in terms of our roles we play in community, our roles that we may do professionally, etc. And when it comes to people understanding two-spirit communities or Indigiqueer communities, what is it that you wish people understood about two-spirit folk? And any one of you can go ahead and a very light question to get things started, if you will.
I can start.
Yeah, hi Sam.
I think the biggest thing that I want people to understand is that it's more than what our Western idea of gender and sexuality is about, because we have a very specific set of words and a specific language that we use in Western ideas when we talk about gender and sexuality. And being two-spirit is more than just like a social identity. It's a spiritual identity. It's historic. It runs in our blood. It runs through our ancestors up to who we are today. And being two-spirit is not like a one-for-one for like being trans or presenting as like non-binary or presenting as like a gay man, lesbian, whatever, there is not a one-for-one comparison in our Western language, in our Western understanding of gender and sexuality for being two-spirit. And I think that's the biggest thing I want people to take away, is because a lot of times our two-spirit identity and our two-spirit existence gets talked over when we try to just incorporate it into the idea of being only like trans, right?
Mm-hmm. You know, Charlie, I don't know if it was today, but I saw on, I think it was on your Instagram feed, you were actually you were having a conversation about this, about sort of folks identifying as two-spirit who aren't native. It was, I don't know if it was today or yesterday, it was in the past couple of days. And I'm just curious if you have thoughts, on what Sam had shared, and also maybe how even the idea of two-spirit has evolved from that original time when it was shared at that convening in 1990 to where we are in 2022. And if you all have other thoughts around that too, please come on and chime in.
Well, thank you so much for asking me that question, Roger. It's actually kind of funny because I was reading a chapter from Spaces Between Us by Scott Laurie
Yeah.
Morgenson, in which he sort of really started to talk about what two-spirit means today versus like how it came about back in the 1990s when it was shared at convening. And yes, there was a video today that I posted that really was sort of explaining why non-natives in particular cannot claim or cannot be two-spirit, because it was not coined for them. It was not translated for them. It's not meant for them at all because, and there's actually a lovely two-spirit youth person who commented and really expanded upon why. It's because the way for her, the way she conceptualizes her identity is informed by these ceremonies, these teachings, these sort of practices and traditions within her community that really cemented her identity and growth as a two-spirit person. And she's never against it, which I think says a lot about the sort of expansion and evolution and growth that we have seen within the two-spirit community. Um, and I don't, and I was not at the convening. I mean, it happened literally years before I was born. But I think there is something to highlight that like the way that it was intended at the time was really to sort of not reclaim, but to sort of awaken
Mm.
traditions and knowledges that were dormant within our communities, and to really get that process, to really restart that process of resurgence, rematriation, the
Yeah.
return of Indigenous land and life, as Eve Tuck and Kane Wayne Gang argued, and decolonization is not a metaphor. And so to be Two Spirit today can mean so many things, but I think what's really integral is actually what Sam said, that it's more than just a conflation of gender and sexuality. It's a way of being, it's a way of responsibility within one's own community.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I was thinking about in terms of responsibility, Vic, I wanna ask you about however much you feel like sharing about what you may be experiencing in the world right now in terms of representation and how using an identity like Two Spirit as an act of or as in a participation of like a social justice movement, like what that might mean for you.
Thanks for that question, Roger. Actually, I wanted a little bit to what you guys about before.
I think we lost.
Of like Indigiqueer and Two Spirit like relatives. Like I have learned.
You're
Can you
good.
hear me?
Yeah.
I'm gonna turn off my video. I think there's some technical difficulties here.
Sure.
Okay. So I actually learned this from like my younger Two Spirit community about how, identifying as Two Spirit and Indigiqueer, how it's changing over time. And I think being Two Spirit for me, when I first learned the term, I was looking for a sense of belonging. Like I was looking for a connection to indigeneity. And something that I learned from the next community, from the next generation, is that that being Two Spirit and being Indigiqueer is up to the individual by themselves. I learned so much from my younger generation. Recently, I learned actually from Charlie about like the binary, like that Two Spirit represents with like femininity and masculinity. And I just want people to know that each person like is their own individual and can identify in like so many different genders. And it's a big role, like for example, again, like for me, um, just using the term Two Spirit to just kind of just highlight it and shed some light to it um, during like like I'm just gonna talk about it. I'm sorry. So what Roger was talking about is a felony charge that I'm facing with other Two Spirit relatives and femme identifying folks for a alleged toppling of a Junipero Serra statue. And so through that alleged toppling and that whole case, I've been able to actually share the true history of who this colonizer was. And we've been able to actually like put that identity out like on papers and talk about it and shed light on it and just share the history about like when the mission development was brought here to so-called California, it went for the Two Spirit and the women and the children first. So I think it plays like a major part in invisibility for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate your sharing that, Vic. I know when I've just read articles around what are referred to as the Indigenous Peoples Five, Indigenous Peoples Day 5, oftentimes they will refer to Two Spirit people that were a part of that. And it leads me to really think about like representation and how sometimes, folks have these perspectives of Two Spirit folks and forget that we are also activists who are willing to bring to attention some really difficult conversations to have. I'm going to bring our attention to something that someone asked in the YouTube chat field, and I'm going to ask Boyd to take this question on, which is, do you think there's a difference between urban two-spirit and rural two-spirit? And then the follow-up question is like, since urban people may have less access to their own, I believe that they're meaning like their own practices.
Okay. I think there's a difference between urban and rural two spirits in a sense that I find the community easier to find in an urban setting. So to find that sense of belonging would be there to access culture in that way. But also, in my experience speaking with, other two-spirit relations in this territory, for those who are on rural settings like reservations or Métis settlements, even their access may be limited due to like the residual effects of colonization. A lot of the people in indigenous communities still like believe in Catholicism, Christianity, and all that. So I think in a sense, the level of access to culture is limited in both ways, but in different ways. Yeah.
Well, I know you also had the experience of coming from a smaller town and now living in Los Angeles. And I know one of the things that you do for the community is, and for representation, is the Indigenous Pride LA event. So I'm just curious, maybe if you would be willing to share even any personal anecdotes or experience you have from having had the more rural experience to now having the urban experience.
Yeah, thank you. So as I introduced before, I'm also the co-chair for Indigenous Pride LA, which is Los Angeles' only pride organization / event that acknowledges, celebrates, and honors two-spirit, Indigiqueer, and Indigenous LGBTQ plus heritage, culture, and identities. So for me, coming from a rural area, I grew up all 18 years of my life in the Navajo Nation, right, on my own homelands, which I do consider that a blessings of sorts, but it also comes with its challenges, right? And I think it would be kind of naive to say that because I grew up in rural settings, it was all glitz and glamours, right? I had the medicine people roll out the red carpet for me because I was two-spirit. Like that didn't happen, right? On the reservation, you pretty much do experience, in some cases, extreme effects of colonization because it's by your own people, because it cuts so deep, because it's from your own elders, right? And so I think coming from a rural perspective, yes, I was very fortunate that my own grandmother exposed me to the idea of Nadlehe, which is kind of our, I guess, gender variance, if you will, non-cis persons in Diné culture. I was exposed to that at a very young age. I didn't know what that was. Of course, these conversations happened in Navajo, right? And when you're a child and getting spoken to in Navajo, a lot of times things don't register as important. Just because you think it's just a story. But when you get older, it starts to make more sense, especially when you run into other res queens, right? Other res two-spirit, other res not let people on the reservation. You're like, oh my God, this isn't just a me thing. This is a we thing, right? This is something we collectively experience. It's not just happened to me. And it was medicine when I found that out, that it wasn't just me, but it was also it's kind of tricky because I grew up in a different generation. I grew up in the 2000s. And I know that, being gay and trans has so much visibility right now, but back then that wasn't the case. It was kind of a shameful thing to be that, right? And so juxtaposing it when I came out to LA in 2011, it was so different. It was so different because I feel like a lot of the work that both Native and non-Native trans and queer people have done out here in LA, it laid the groundwork for me to experience a freedom, if you will, that I'd never experienced on the res back home growing up. Now I'm thankful that it is getting a bit better, right? These conversations in Navajo are starting to reawaken back on the Navajo Nation of being Nadle and being someone different so much that it's starting to happen within Christian and Mormon spaces on the Navajo Nation, where some Christian and Mormon Navajos are starting to identify as Nadle and Mormon and Catholic and Christian, which just blows my mind.
Wow.
So yeah, that's what I got to say about that.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, keeping with that theme with representation, Sam, I want to ask you about um, two-spirit representation at a drum. You know, BAAITS is not the only two-spirit drum in the Bay Area. We're actually blessed to have two two-spirit drums in the Bay Area, and two-spirit drums in general maybe are a rare thing. Um, and so for folks that may not know much about drum, or sitting at the drum, or caring for the drum, I'd love to hear, Sam, if you can share with us the importance of two-spirit representation at a drum.
Yeah, of course. So I came to this drum knowing absolutely nothing about what it means to be on a drum, let alone what it meant to be a two-spirit person sitting at a drum. You know, like even like having a drum that allows women to sit at the drum and that allows two-spirit people to sit at a drum is a very, very unique experience that I am lucky to have stumbled upon. I found it by reaching out to another organization, asking if they allow females on their drum, and they said no, and they referred me over to the then drumkeeper Phoenix, and that's how I found this the BAAITS drum. Historically, with the powwows, you have, you know, the drums come and the drummers are all men. Women can stand behind the drum and sing along, but the tradition is said as woman gave men the drum. And so it is a gift from women to men, and therefore women wanting to sit at the drum is like taking back the gift, and it is seen as disrespectful. And so for a long time, even now, women aren't allowed to sit at the drum, at most drums. If a female drum shows up to a powwow, some dancers will refuse to dance. Other drums will want to pull out of the event. It is a big deal. It's seen as a lot from, it's seen by a lot of elders as like a break from tradition. And so having that history there makes it a very interesting experience going into the world being a two-spirit drum, because being neither male, female, you know, being this identity of both and mixed makes it confusing for some people. It makes tradition confusing. But historically, two-spirit people are medicine. The drum is not just a drum. It's not just an instrument. It's medicine, right? It is a living relative that is part of the community. It is not something to be locked away in a cabinet. It is cared for in very meticulous ways. And so it is an extension of us as medicine, and having an ability to share the two-spirit medicine with this drum is not only bringing representation to spaces that need it for other two-spirit folks, but it is allowing people access to this medicine that they've never had before. I think one thing that a lot of people forget is that powwow was born out of the inability to celebrate ourselves, to have dance, to come together and just be indigenous, right? And so we need to be able to learn and grow, and tradition. Powwow is not a long-standing tradition, right? It is a new thing that was born out of no longer having dances be illegal, you know? And so tradition can move and change and shift. And I think that having more female drums and having more two-spirit drums is allowing for more people to see that shift and accept that shift. There are a lot of protocols that come along with being on the drum. Each drum's protocols are different, but if you ever go and you want to sit at a drum, bring the drum keeper some tobacco. This is true for anybody, anything that you're doing. If you're coming to ask for a favor, to ask for help, to ask to be included, bring someone an offering. If it's tobacco, if it's sage, you know, bring an offering. Usually that offering will be accepted as a blessing to the drum, and kind of you can ask the drum keeper what protocols are. You can ask the people around you. You can also just kind of look around and see what people are doing. But a lot of drums have a rule, like if women are menstruating, they can't sit at the drum, even if it is a female drum. So there's a lot that goes into it, and having this two-spirit medicine out in the world is, in my opinion, making the world a better place.
Well, you know, that idea of thank you, Sam, of being out in the world makes me want to bring you back in, Charlie, because I'm thinking about representation. And when I reached out to you, Charlie, you know, I think you know, it's like, oh, great, one more person just writing to you know, someone that might have a following, saying, hey, recognize our little powwow here in California, you know. And I remember being like, you know, I'm a legit professor, like you know, I'm not just some random on the internet. And you know, in particular, because students in a course that I teach around Native sexuality um, share your videos with me throughout the semester. So I was already familiar with your work, and you know, my students are bringing your work in. And there's something about that, you know, like as someone that is in the academic world, it makes me think this is a new area to also be studying, and I want to, you know, I have to adapt my coursework now to be more inclusive of things like TikTok, Instagram, where this amazing content is being created. And I want to hear from you around the role that social media can play in this emergence of a two-spirit indigiqueer identity. I'm going to bring you folks all in on this question too. So Charlie, go ahead.
No, thank you, Roger. It's always, I mean, I always find it like very affirming that so many people share my work and also that it's coming into academic spaces. Because I will be honest, I often have to, you know, sort of tussle with my faculty and fellow colleagues about the importance of social media, especially for this younger generation, um, who have used social media in a way to, I think, sort of, the way I often describe it is to take ownership of the narrative for so long. I think particularly for us as Indigenous peoples, and most in particular as those who are Two-Spirit, Indigiqueer, or those who are upon the LGBTQ plus spectrum, our type of narratives are often really reduced to caricatures. And particularly as Indigenous peoples, we're always regulated to either the noble savage, Pocahontas, these type of characters that don't allow us to be complicated, that don't sort of show off our authenticity. But something I always love to remind people about social media in particular, when we think about TikTok, is that it allows us to sort of change the narrative, allows us to sort of complicate, it allows us to show the parts of ourselves that often are denied
Mm.
within our own communities, and to also share parts of ourselves with the world that we know is celebrated somewhere. And I think particularly for us here on the panel, because I mean, all of us here have social media in some way, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, whether it's TikTok. And all of us, I think, what I would argue, all of us have found some sort of community with other LGBTQ, Two-Spirit, Indigenous peoples that we didn't really have access to growing up. I mean, same way, I grew up like in the 2000s. Like, I graduated high school in 2013, so like my entire childhood was really regulated to like within my own community, and I didn't have access to social media until I was, oh my gosh, in college, and that was like literally less than a decade ago. I didn't have a phone. I didn't even have TV. And so there was these type of things of, you know, barriers to technology that many of us experience. But today we're seeing the sort of, not necessarily reliance on technology, but the sort of strategic way to use it to have to cultivate communities, to create communities, and to share knowledge, to sort of embrace the joy of what it means to be queer, trans, indigenous, two-spirit in the 21st century. And that's what I really appreciate about about social media, also about two-spirit, but also about social media. Granted, I do have my critiques, but that is a whole other conversation.
Yeah, well, I think it would be really interesting to get a group of you folk who are doing I don't even know what you call it, creating content. Is that the phrase that folks use that are creating content?
Yeah, it's
Uh,
content creation. It's
Content creation. Just to get a group of you folks together that are out there talking about this issue, I think would be really, really interesting. So maybe that's something that we can do in the future. And even an event like this tonight, social media using this forum to come together when unfortunately, COVID is still being what it is. Although, hey, BAAITS leadership, I think I want to just put a plug in that we should always continue to do these virtual events leading up to the event, to the main event, and hopefully we'll be able to be in person together soon, maybe next year. And let's keep these virtual events going because it is a way to connect and bring folks in, like our friend Boyd up in Edmonton, Two Spirit. And I'm curious around, just going with that idea of representation. And sometimes I've often thought that the way that two-spirit societies and organizations organize in those Canadian lands seem different than the way that the States does it. And I wonder if it's sometimes we have different relationships with the government or there's different funding that may be available to folks. Though I do, and maybe it's just my own not fully knowing, of course, I know things are challenging. And I've always thought that, well, there's a different way that I feel that Two Spirit is represented in Canada than it is in the United States. And I don't know if that's just a projection I'm having on my northern friends, or if you can say something around a Two Spirit representation in Canada.
One thing I will say about E2S is, one thing we had to do is sort of assimilate and conform to these colonial structures by incorporating as nonprofit organizations, because that allows us to, apply for funding that we wouldn't have had access to otherwise. It definitely increases our capacity to organize, and that's something that we've been working on for the past couple of years. We're kind of like an umbrella organization of Two Spirits in Motion, which was, I guess, initiated by Richard Jenkins, who is an elder knowledge keeper who started Edmonton Two Spirit Society. So she's like a legend, icon goddess. And there's different groups in each province that are either local to their city, they have a regional reach across the province, or they're just in a mecca like Toronto. I know it's a little different in Wabanaki, where there's like an expanse of regions that are that specific group. I think that even goes into New York area, or Maine. And I'm not too sure about like the relationship building between each organization. We're all kind of like autonomous and doing our own things within our regions. But I definitely look forward to the next WIN Forum by Two Spirits in Motion, where it brings people from all over the nation, or Canada rather, to, be together in ceremony, but also like make important decisions collectively.
Yeah, and I know that last time I think last time I saw you was at the Powwow at BAAITS, but then just the summer before that we were together in Montana at one of the international Two-Spirit gatherings. So hopefully we'll be able to gather again very soon in that way as well. There's a question that is being asked from the YouTube community, which is around what do you do as a two-spirit person when your community doesn't accept you? And how do you serve your community when they don't back you? And Yue, I want to bring you in here. If you have any thoughts around what you can do as a two-spirit person, your community doesn't
Yeah.
accept you.
So I want to begin with a story, if that's okay.
Please.
I graduated high school in Kayenta, Arizona, Monument Valley High School in 2011. I didn't know I was well known, but now I know. But apparently, in at least the northern part of the Navajo Nation, there was a rumor going around that a boy wanted to wear a dress for his graduation. I soon learned that that was me, that people were talking about. And it started because I came out as trans, you know, officially came out like to my mom, to my friends, whatever. People not intimate to me, I should say. I came out in 2009. And so I had this vision that, you know, in my process of reclamation and in my process of reawakening and rediscovering my Nadlahe heritage, I wanted to wear a dress for my high school graduation because, you know, we don't really have I guess, a higher education aside from Diné College. We don't have another higher education institution where you can celebrate that, right? You're part of your academic success. And learning education academically is, you know, it's woven into the Navajo teachings, the Nek Eche. And so to celebrate that aspect of your life, I wanted to wear a Navajo traditional rug dress. And I was telling my friends who are close to me that, hey, I'm gonna be wearing this dress, just because I want to tell them, like, I was so happy that I was gonna do this. Fast forward to like maybe March or April before the graduation, I was literally taken from class. I didn't know this was illegal. I was taken from my class by the principal, and I sat down with the principal, the vice principal, and a cultural specialist, who I now recently learned is talking about LGBTQ plus and all that on the Navajo Nation. She still hasn't given me an apology. I sat down with her and they closed the door behind me and said, "We're worried that you are going to wear this dress and upset a lot of people." So I'm thinking, it's not going to upset a lot of people. A lot of the people in my hometown are cool with me. They know who I am. They know my family. It's a real, you know, part of my language. It's a real fucking small town. Everyone knows who I am. Okay, but you shouldn't make it about you. This is about the entire class. Don't make it about you. I'm not making it about me. I'm celebrating my accomplishment. I think it was kind of like I got the idea that they were thinking that I was trying to make like a freak show or like a platform to celebrate me. But I was like, I'm not doing that. This is a part of our history, Nadlahe heritage. I want to wear this dress. It is my right to wear this dress. And it was just so intimidating that I had not only the principal, vice principal, but a cultural specialist telling me to my face, that's not who we are. Wow. That's not in our culture. And I'm this 18-year-old young trans person crying because this elder who is a cultural specialist told that to my face when my grandma told me different, when all these books and university libraries are telling me different, when stories of other res queens and their experiences tell me different. It just cut me that deep that these three adults would gang up on me. And I say this story because when I left the res, I had so much hatred in my heart. I had so much hatred that I didn't like my school. I didn't like my faculty. I didn't like the people who were trying to silence me. And so I left with that bitterness in my heart. And it wasn't until I went to Cal State Long Beach, which I soon learned has the oldest American Indian Studies program west of the Mississippi River in the US. I didn't know that. But when I was taking the certificate in American Indian Studies, I started learning and I started decolonizing and I started learning all these stuff that I didn't know, like court cases, analyzing those court cases. How did they affect my mom? How did they affect my grandma? So much healing went on that I started to forgive my people. And to this day, I will help my people, but I've kind of resorted to the idea that I'm gonna help them from afar, if that makes sense. I'm gonna help them and build my life out here on LA on Tongva people lands. I have a great connection with the Tongva, Ahachiman, Chumash, and Tatavian people. I've built these connections. I cherish them. They cherish me. But I'm just helping my people from afar. Now, there are some people who live on the reservation. If you know Geronimo Louis, look them up. They live on the reservation. They have a supportive family, right? But unfortunately, I don't really have a supportive biological family, if you will. So it's not like I can go back home and kind of pave my own path, right? I could try and do that, but there's just going to be so much opposition to me flourishing. But I'm happy to see that there are families out on the reservation who are supportive of their children, of their child, because of the work that we, all of us on the Zoom call, are collectively doing.
Yeah.
You know, we're reawakening our places and our families even.
Yeah.
Because it's just horrible hearing stories of Navajos, and trigger warning, Navajos, you know, committing suicide because they don't feel love in their own community. Of Navajo people running away, participating in activities that are self-harming. You know, that is on the low now. And so I'm really happy that this, like, families are reawakening. But I guess if this is a youth asking this, or just anyone in general, and you don't feel safe in your own community, self-preservation, honey. Self-preservation. Stay alive at any cost that you have. If that means moving off the reservation, so be it. And I don't like that many people think that if you move away from your homeland, you'll be disconnected. You will not. There's so many Navajos, we are everywhere. You can find a family, you can find kinship. A lot of Navajos out here in LA know their clans. I've already established some kinship out here. You know, there's healing, there's love out here. You will find happiness. It's okay. I'm not saying move away and stay away. Move away until you've healed. If it's that bad, move away until you've healed. And if you feel like you want to go back and help and you are in that process of forgiving your people, by all means, go back and help your people. But I just want us to live and thrive. So self-preservation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. You know, you really speak to the importance of community, where we land, right? And then so much of everything that I know about the work that you all are doing, you know, is to center a decolonial framework. And you know, that being directly tied to land. Vic, I want to ask you just around this idea of land back and rematriation, reconnecting with the land, knowing like the work that you've done with Segurite. Just curious around what role you think land can play in two-spirit movements.
Well, I'm gonna start with saying that when I've, you know, all of these like land back camps that have emerged from all of these pieces of lands that have been wanting, that need protection from these like false man-made borders. I see just two-spirit and Indigiqueer folks just holding it down, just like doing all this work. Sometimes doing this work like being unrecognized, you know, like doing this work on the down low, what I like to say, organizing away from like social media and, you know, just kind of communicating with each other. So yeah, so shout out to like to all those like queer folks holding down those land back encampments, land back camps, that there was a lot of them, I believe last year. Yeah, so land back. Yeah, so over the last 3 years, I've been very fortunate to be able to reconnect with the land, not my ancestral territory, but here in an urban setting, in the village of Huchun. And, you know, I know that I come with my ancestors, and I know when people like see me on the land, like they see me and they like, again, with social media, they see like, sometimes I go by like Two-Spirit Vic, And, I know that community feels safe around me. So they'll come around me and they'll ask questions. They feel safe around me. Other like community members, there's a large like queer community here, like in the Bay Area. They have a lot of questions about land rematriation and how can they be a good guest on stolen land? How can they be in right reciprocity with the people of this land, And like sometimes, a lot of spaces where these conversations are being are happening, like they're not queer friendly. So I'm just incredibly grateful for folks to be able to feel safe around me to come ask questions and ask me to come speak about these. And all I could do is just like share my story and stay true to self and just speak with love and just speak about how much the land has healed me and has reawakened ancestral knowledge with traditional medicines. And it's just not land back. It's land back all over Turtle Island. Like I mentioned earlier, like I'm first generation and here and on Turtle Island on both of my parents' side. And so when I identify as like two-spirit and I speak to other like Mexica folks or like Spanish speaking folks, like I'm able to talk about like land back and try to translate it the best way as possible, talk about two spirits and translate it into like dos espíritus. And now I'm like, like trying to learn like how would I say like Indigiqueer like in Spanish, even though like my Spanish is not like perfect, but like I want to like share these stories and like wherever I go, I just talk about like this movement happening here in the Bay Area through the Segorte Land Trust in an urban setting with the Lashana Loni for like a non-federally recognized tribe. And just to be able to tell folks, like this is possible and it's possible wherever you're at, like anywhere that you're at on Turtle Island, like the people from that land have been displaced and like everybody here benefits from like the removal of those people. So people need to honor like wherever they're at and occupying that land, being a settler on their land or being a guest on that land. So wherever I go, I just try to talk about, this movement. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Thank you so much. We are coming up on our time. We've got about maybe 8 minutes left. So if you do have any questions for our panel, please feel free to drop them into the chat field now. Boyd, you said something earlier about Richard and starting Edmonton Two-Spirit Society, and it really got me to think about folks like Barbara Cameron, Randy Burns, who started Gay American Indians in the 1970s. And all the folks that started the Bay Area American Indian Two-Spirit over a couple of decades ago. And I'm really curious about those of you that are here tonight on the panel. What are your thoughts about the role that this emerging generation, your generation, of Two-Spirit, Indigiqueer, LGBTQ plus Native people can provide to our elders? What are your thoughts about that?
I can speak a little bit to this.
Great.
I think it's the same kind of like mirroring effect that like two-spirit folks have with like our two-spirit elders and like young queer folks have with their queer elders, in the idea that because a path has been paved for us, we have this ability to like move our community forward, but that also means growth and change in unexpected areas. And so helping to lead our elders into this new age of like different words, different ideas, different terms, different ways of experiencing our existence is a symbiotic relationship between the youth and our elders, and recognizing the fact that somebody can be Indigenous and non-binary, Indigenous and trans, and not feel like they're two-spirit, right? Like two-spirit isn't an automatic label just because you're Indigenous, And so I think our role within our Indigenous communities is to also recognize that we are often fighting for a community that is not fighting for us. you know? And like, I had an experience where I was sitting on a panel for Indigenous representation in the media, and I introduced myself as a two-spirit person, and the Indigenous person next to me said, "Oh, we don't believe in two-spirit people," you know? And so it's like, as youth, it is our job to grow and learn and not silence the other Indigenous people sitting next to us, you know? And so as we work with our elders in building up our communities and building up the strength in these urban areas, we are then allowing ourselves, kind of like Yue said, when people come out here and they heal and they go back, it brings all of this community of two-spiritness, all these new identities and ways of existing back into our communities, and hopefully paves a path for more and more Indigenous youth to feel safe and comfortable in who they are.
Mm. You know, when I was with the elders the other day on the elders panel, I was chatting with Auntie Stephen. Some of you may know Auntie Stephen, and it was just sort of like, you know, how'd you start getting called Auntie? Like, at what point in our lives do we, you know, because unlike you all graduating in the early 2000s, I was born in the 70s. So I've had this my own realization that, oh, I'm cuspy uncle right now. I'm right on that cusp of, oh gosh, it's not long until I'm an elder. And you know, one thing that we always also have to consider is like though our elders that are with us today, you know, are those that also survived the HIV pandemic, you know, and are still surviving that, which, you know, colonialism and all the other marginalizations that happened to our elders, they also survived HIV, right? And so we maybe not have as many elders as we want because of that. And so, you know, even thinking about all of you here, you know, recognizing that you are soon to be the next generation too. So I'm going to have you all kind of close out with just the remaining moments we have here. And Charlie, I'm going to start with you, just to bring you into the conversation and really anything that you would like to offer the next generation of emerging two-spirit Indigiqueers who are going to come after you all. And then I'll ask that for all of you too.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let me see if I can respond to this in less than 2 minutes. So I actually was tweeting about this earlier. I ran on Twitter way too much, by the way. But one thing I was thinking about is the fact that there's not as many queer and trans native elders as there should be because of the American Indian boarding school incidents,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
the AIDS epidemic,
Mm-hmm.
all these sort of moments of violence against our communities that specifically targeted them. And it's really strange to think about that because I think for a lot of Native youth, and especially for, I think, particularly within the trans community, there's a statistics that sort of highlights our precarity within the U.S. empire. That like the average age for a trans woman is 35 in terms of like life expectancy. And so, as someone who is turning 27 at the end of March, I think about that because like I'm in this like weird thing where like yes, I'm an anti figure for a lot of people, but like for a lot of others, I'm seen as like this elder just because of like my intellect, because of the way I sort
Mm-hmm.
of present myself. And it's very weird to have to, I think, contend with that about like age and presence and the sort of influence and responsibility that a lot of us have within our communities that we have towards these youth. And so there's a sort of need for us to sort of celebrate them and support them and how they come to know themselves, how they come to articulate themselves, how to come to share knowledge and institutional memory with them. And I guess one advice that I want to land on is that you know yourself like no one else does, and do not let anyone take that away from you. And those are words specifically from my mother, who has had her own sort of journey of accepting me as like trans. It's an interesting a story for another time.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Charlie, thank you so much for being here. We have just a couple minutes, folks. Anybody else would like to share a final outgoing message for the youth, or really for anyone who may be watching today, Two Spirit ally, whoever might be there today?
To be yourself. be yourself and walk with love. And I just want to just express so much gratitude for the new generation and for the generation before us that paved this way. I'm in my 30s. I'm 31, 90s. So yeah, I'm just like so incredibly grateful to all the elders. There isn't a lot of elders, you know, and for me, I have a lot of, you know, like I guess you could say straight elders in my community that, you know, that I talk to about like what it is being Indigiqueer. And so actually like I learned Charlie, and I learned so much from like the younger generation. And one of the things that I've learned from them that I think about every morning when I wake up is this liberated love, you know, for and for each other, and like so stick to yourselves and just know that sometimes all we have is our ancestors to fall back on.
Beautiful. Love that. Liberated love. UA, Sam, Boyd, anything you'd like to share?
Remember that you are walking, talking, breathing medicine. You are the result of all of your ancestors who survived, fought and survived before you. And it gets hard, especially this is especially for the young ones. Like it gets really hard sometimes, but you have a community out here, whether it's online, whether it's in person, in like small groups on Facebook. You have a community. Find your community and heal together, and just do your best to safely be you.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I can go. I have loads of advice to give out almost every day. So if you follow me on social media, I'll give it out. But today I want to talk about our youth because we don't see ourselves in the media that much. I just want to say that your skin is beautiful. Your hair texture of all textures is beautiful. Your big, round, native indigenous head is beautiful. Your broad shoulders are beautiful. Your barrel big chest that you get made fun of is beautiful. Your big nose are beautiful. Your big lips are beautiful. You are fierce. Your beauty has existed before Americas, before any Latin American countries, before Canada, before, you know, invasion and colonization. You are beautiful. And I just want everyone to know that because we don't see ourselves. We don't see ourselves. So this is advice I want to give everyone. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, UA. And Boyd, anything to close us out tonight?
I just want to express sincere gratitude to you, first and foremost, for inviting me to sit here with a bunch of other amazing movers, shakers, trailblazers, doing a lot to positively impact our communities. And in today's virtual world, I definitely look forward to keeping in contact on social media. So, and of course, looking forward to meeting in person one day.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. After tonight, or after this panel tonight at 7 p.m., there will be the BAAITS drag show. So please tune into that. And then we have our main event. The Powwow is coming up on a Saturday. It will be live streamed on the BAAITS YouTube page. So please be sure to check that out and check out www.BAAITS.org for all the information about this year's 11th annual Two-Spirit Powwow. I want to say a special thank you to all of the panelists that were here tonight. I want to thank the BAAITS Powwow Planning Committee as well as the BAAITS Board for supporting the Two-Spirit Indigiqueer Emergence panel. And as we say down south in Muskogee, where I'm from, Mado, 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 thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Florida Man, for your help as well. Be well, everyone, and I look forward to being with you all real soon. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.
Nice to meet y'all.
Nice to meet you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you.